Okay, say it one more time. Hello and welcome. We are here today at Soul with next a new episode of Soul Star Light Up, episode number 4, and I'm here today with my friend Brian Thompson. I am very excited to have him here. Let me just tell you a little bit about Brian. So Brian is a mindfulness facilitator with a passion for expressive arts. Quite talented rapper, let me tell you. After receiving his master's degree in mindfulness studies from Lesley University, he has committed to sharing mindfulness and its benefits with the community. A spiritual student with a deep love for practice and expression, he hopes to help others develop their own personal and genuine relationship to mindfulness in a way that rings true to them. So excited to have you here, Brian. Thank you so much for your time. I know you are busy. You are a dad. You're a husband. You're, mindfulness facilitator and master. So thank you so much for giving your time and being here. We were talking a little bit before we got on, and I'm so, we've known each other for a couple of years now, but I've never really had a chance to like sit and talk to you. So I'm super excited that we're doing this. So I'm really interested in your journey to mindfulness. Like, tell me a little bit about how you got here. I mean, how do you even think about getting a master's in mindfulness? I'm like, damn it, I missed that boat because I'm not going back to school. But I'm like, that's pretty cool. So tell me about your journey and how you got there.
It's wild. When I think about it, I kind of have to like jump back and forth in time, from different points. Because I think it's only now I can realize how long ago it really started for me. Um, but I think I'll start with like when I kind of like had like a conscious decision. Like I think that's like the best place to look at it. Um, but anyway, I've always called this story like my God story is what I've called it because I was raised Catholic and then born again Christian. So any concept of like anything larger than myself, like existential type questions, was always really tied around the word God and whatever that had meant in my life. So it was in 2015 and I was doing some work. At the time, I was working in like different residential programs, so kids who have really been dealt some really like crappy cards in their lives, and doing that kind of work. Um, and at the time, I was what a friend had like a secret spirituality, meaning I had kind of like walked away from traditional forms of religion in this because there was just like a lot of things that weren't necessarily like sitting right with me or like left like a lot of questions. So it left me kind of very just uneasy and scared in many ways because there was, this hope and the desire to be connected to something larger. But there was so much like I didn't understand, right? Like I grew up in like during the time in high school where the concept of like being gay, like I felt like I needed to hate these people and that did not sit right with me at all. Like that doesn't feel like love for me. So there were a lot of like questions and things like that seemed to have no answer. Um, so I kind of like said, stopped going to church and kind of kept spirituality to myself. And then one day this year, I had gone to visit my mom, and while I was there, my uncle was there. My uncle is a very very devout Christian, and he is like he does. He's speaking about Jesus, and I found myself very much not attached is the wrong word, but very became like very much like curious, like a
Mhm.
deep questioning about like, man, what can or how can someone speak so adamantly about something that they can't see? Like what is it that drives them to be? And this curiosity like really stayed with me and really like stuck with me. Um, so I went home, I kept like pondering in. I was getting ready to play Xbox, and I sat down to play Xbox, and then I had this thought go through my head. I said, "Why are you doing this?" And it was intense. It was like a very intense feeling for me where it felt like it was me, but it also didn't feel like me.
Mhm.
Um, and it kind of shook me a little bit. So I, was like, I need to go take a walk. So I grabbed the dog and we went outside and went for a walk. And while I'm outside on this walk, I had this sensation of a song being stuck in my head. And for the first time, in my life, I can remember, I suddenly said, like, what does it mean to have a song stuck in your head? Like, this logically doesn't make sense, to be hearing something that I know is not actually here right now. Like, what is this experience that I'm having? So I stopped and I closed my eyes, and I took a deep breath, and the music stopped. And I started to hear things that made sense for where I was presently in the moment. Like, I started to hear birds in the trees. I started to hear cars like passing in the distance. Um, and again, I was like, this is just a really, really intense feeling for me. I'm not really sure what it is that I'm experiencing at the moment. I go home, and I sit down on the couch, I pop on Netflix, and I'm like scrolling through stuff. And then again, I have this thought of like, why are you doing this? So at this point now, having occurred 3 times in a row, in like a relatively like quick amount of time, I just like turned everything off, and I got down on my knees and I started praying. Um, who knows how long it's been that I think I've like really been this connected to my own prayer. And I was like, listen, God, whomever you are, whatever you are, in any respect, I'm tired of pretending that I know, because I've gone to church, or because I've had a family that are religious, or I've picked up a Bible, or read a verse, or whatever, because that doesn't feel authentic to me. I feel like I'm pretending a little bit. But there is an immense desire to know. I don't know if I'm doing this right, or if there is a right way to do this, but I'm like just surrendering here now to the fact that I don't know, but I wholeheartedly would like to know, if that is, and in that instance of not knowing and giving up the need to know, and just like really allowing myself to just be there, I just became so overcome with this feeling that I can only describe as love, like an undeniable, all-encompassing love, like not just love like from the Hallmark stance, like this feels really good, but like love also holds all of the garbage and all of the darkness and all of like
everything and nothing. Yeah.
everything and nothing. And I like started crying and bawling, and I was like, that's it. I'm like, that is what people, since the search began, have been searching for. And it felt so visceral, and it felt so real. Um, and I don't know, I was like, I gotta continue to be in a relationship with this, and that is. So it really started to reignite some interest in different contemplative practices, different religions, like no singular in particular. I'm like more desire to like look like what's beyond that, like, like what is bringing all of these things into life. So that's when I think like the spark was reignited, or at least I became like aware of the spark within me, and things started to shift, and things started to change. I was at the time working towards, or at least like kind of mentally planning, preparing myself to go towards my degree in social work, because that's kind of the route that we are taught. Like, you go to psychology, and then from psychology you kind of like go into social work if you're involved in these areas. But that didn't resonate with me anymore. Like there was something different. Like I really started to dive into my meditation practices and what that meant for me, and what I was feeling, what I was experiencing, until one day, the year or so later, I just happened to type into the computer like degree in meditation. I put on to Lesley, and I ended up going to Lesley, and that was the start of an absolutely amazing journey. With the bouncing back in time thing. I started meditating in high school. I had a teacher, George Woodbridge, rest in peace, George, and he first introduced me and some of my friends just to like meditation practice, and we started like meditation club in high school. And I remember, even just like as a young person, practicing sometimes, and then walking outside and being like, damn, the colors look great. Like better, and like the trees look greener.
Right.
Like, and there's like something to this, and I
Yeah.
didn't fully grasp it or understand it. But for any of my friends, anyone who knows or who knew or knows George, um, knows he's absolutely an amazing person, and I think he allowed the opportunity for myself and many of our friends to really just like experience life in a different way, do teaching us some practices to experience life in a very different way. So after my whole God story incident happened, I called him up and I was like, "Yo, we need to talk. Like, we need to, really start to get into this again, and like, I want to practice, like, start practicing more regularly." So I started to see him more regularly. Started to just continue to build my practice on a regular basis. He was an excellent and amazing support while I was at Lesley. Um, as for me, my time at Lesley was, mindfulness was relatively new for me. I didn't really know what it was. Like, I always say that I fell into mindfulness. I had this experience that was in my own life just so profound that I became really interested in it. I just wanted to learn more about it. And like a lot of the people who were in my cohort that I studied with, many have had already like had an established practice, whether it's like a yoga practice or something. Like for me, I'm like, this is completely new for me. Everything I'm learning is brand new. But going and studying and devoting that time, like the time and effort that goes into like acquiring one's master's degree, for me felt like that's how I get back to this. That's how I get back to this practice that has really changed my life, and I can take it and I can grow with it and I can help it to continue to grow and become a resource that is like that's available to people in this world in new and exciting ways, that weren't maybe necessarily available to me as a young person, or were there, but are exposure, especially as time goes now. Like that, and that's something that I think I'm definitely seeing now. Is mindfulness is like such a buzzword. uh,
I know.
Everyone wants to learn about it and incorporate it in some capacity. And I think when I was first just like coming into relationship with mindfulness, there was a lot of fear
Yeah.
around it, a lot of fear in what it means and how, is we're trying to indoctrinate like Buddhist practices into young people, or somehow practicing mindfulness makes you like not a real Christian, and all of these things. So, for me, what I learned is, or what I tell people who question like my faith in God is, my mindfulness practice quiets my mind, like my ego mind, so that I can hear God,
Yeah,
so
that's
that I
right.
can, so
That's
that I
right.
can with spirit. Um, and to me, I'm like, that's a great thing.
Yeah,
that's
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 right.
a great thing.
I mean, if anything, it's brought you closer, right? It's connected you directly, right? Because what religion does is separates us.
Yeah,
It separates us from God, the universe, whatever you want to call it, from that point of the source of all light, the source of all love, the source of everything. It disconnects us, and it tells us that we can't connect with God because we're sinners, because we are from the bred from the original sin. All these things that just completely cut us off. But when we when you had that experience, that was God talking to you. That was your higher self connecting to God, talking to you to say, like, yes, my son, question this because
yeah,
it is not the way that it's supposed to be, right? Like, it's
yeah,
funny. I'm listening to Carolyn Miss now. I don't know if you're familiar with her, but she talks about the mysticism of religion, right? It's not religion. We need to get back to the mystic, because every religion has mysticism. Every religion started in that like you said, you wanted to know more. It wasn't just this kind of surface level. You wanted to go deeper, and
yeah.
that's what you've developed. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. It's been a journey, I think, to to continue to explore that, and
Hmm.
to dive into that, because what I started to find is I was met with a lot of, even though the world is telling me that I'm wrong, am I still gonna follow it?
Right.
And that was really big for me,
Yeah.
because I started to have a lot of these experiences, and when I think when I kind of like first started to I guess just like kind of be with this spiritual larger than self. I don't even know how to, it's that it's your
There are
it's
no words for it.
yeah,
Our little minds don't have the vocabulary for it.
right, exactly. We don't really have the words for it.
Yeah.
There was a lot of fear there. There was a lot of like, this is cool, like from in a sense, like this is kind of like different, but then like also like a lot of fear,
Yeah.
because I was starting to find myself, again, just like with all of these questions that I was beginning to explore, and I started to find that like the places that I was taught as a young person were the places that I was taught as a young person that could provide the answers were not necessarily the places that I would find the answers.
That's right.
It often led me to like more confusion.
Mhm.
I remember being in the office with a coworker at one time, and I was just talking about just like different faiths, and what if, you know, within me, like what if something within me, like while I'm listening to it, like that connects with me, right? Like I don't think that's wrong. Like I feel like that's something within me. And he had said something to me about like, don't fall into false idols, don't do this, don't do that. And there was a part of me while I was in there that was like, I don't think we're talking the same language, because I recognize what you're trying to tell me, and there's a part of me that's like, I still love you for, even though you're telling me to kind of deny something that feels right for me,
Right.
and that I feel brings me closer to love, which is ultimately what I am trying to do, is just be closer to love and express love. And I really started to think about something that my uncle had said a lot about. There's going to be a time where everybody kind of has to open up and say whether or not they believe in God, and if they practice this, or if they deny God. And something dawned on me one day. I was like, wow, I do that every day. I do that every single day. Like I'm thinking it's going to be this thing and I'm going to have to like own up to being different. I was like, no, I believe in God, and I believe in this relationship. And even in a world of religious people who are telling me that I'm wrong, right? I'm like, I
Mhm.
still am going to stand here and be like, no, I know what I feel. And so I'm
That's right.
doing just that. I'm just doing just that. And that's what it's been ever since. It's been like just a continued journey of, I have a sign right here: become loyal to your innermost truth and follow that, even when other people abandon the path. And that has been, this been this journey, learning to honor what feels right in my heart, and stand up for it, and
That's right.
create boundaries to protect it, and soften and allow other people to shine when it's their time to shine. And it's been quite an amazing journey.
That's right. That's right. And I think so many people, like religious people, and I'm not trying to, talk bad about anyone, but it's the very kind of shallow way of thinking about something. When you go so deeply and so profound into something, it is beyond anything, right? It's so big. Like religious people think that if you become spiritual, or if you practice mindfulness or whatever, that you're disconnected from God, that you're going to the devil, that you're going to the darkness. And it's like, no, actually, I'm connecting deeper and more directly with God. Because of going so deep within yourself, and God is within us, right? I mean, if we're gonna use words from the Bible, we are what is it? Here I am. We are created in His image, right?
Yeah,
We are created in its image because it's all of it. It's everything. God is everything, and He's not a man. It's not a man. So it's we are, if that's the case, then we are God and God is us, and like I said, what formal religion does is separates us from it, and it makes the journey so much harder, and so it puts us into suffering when we don't necessarily need to be in suffering to get to God.
yeah,
Are there moments of suffering? Yes, but we don't have to be in it consistently to get to God.
yeah. To I think to offer like the other perspective as well, because I feel that. I also want to give some friends who are about their faith is. Um, for me, it's helped me to revisit some of these spaces and look at it from like different understandings or like different perspectives, right? So I remember being I was with my wife and we were visiting a friend in Philadelphia, and she had she had asked me what like my faith was. At the time, I was just like, I'm a spiritual person, and she had questioned that. She's like, what does it mean to be a spiritual person? Because I feel as though sometimes that like use of like that phrase of like a spiritual person is kind of used to not do the work, for lack of better words, right? To kind of just like shotgun answer everything, and like I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to. I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I could get that. I can see where you're coming from. Um, for me, what I think I found in, I guess, this way of walking my path is I have a deep appreciation for everyone who practices their faith,
Mm-hmm.
because it takes a strong heart and a level of discipline to be able to do that. And what I have found in what no matter what faith or practice you're talking about is it's that work, it's that discipline that is the consistent part.
Right.
Um, and to me, that's the part that I resonate with is
Mm-hmm.
that deeper work. It's that commitment to continue to look and to explore. And I think on my path, on my journey, it's looking at all of them.
Yeah.
Like what is the work that is happening within all of them? Is that what I know for myself is, I think, I don't want to say staying within one, but framing everything from one perspective is small,
Yeah.
is limited.
That's it.
It creates bias within myself from seeing
That's
and
right.
understanding other perspectives. You know what I mean? So for me to, for lack of better words, to do it right, or to give it justice, or to give it everything, it requires me to do that, to be able to look and sit and be with all of it, not to just push it away because this says, my faith, there is some confusion within it about some other practices from somewhere else. For me, I'm like, when that confusion comes along, um let's look at that, like
Right.
let's look at it with some compassion and see what's
Right.
there. And my studies at Lesley, um, there's a lot of background, like it's a lot of information about coming into like mindfulness through the Buddhist perspectives, right? So we also have just like a pretty strong foundation in traditional Buddhist practices and how mindfulness has kind of just traveled over time. What I found for myself is learning about Buddhism helped me to re to like gain the confidence and a degree of self-compassion to like revisit like the Bible, for example.
Yeah.
But there, for me, I am definitely one of those people who experience a lot of like Catholic guilt. Like you're taught about sin at a very, very young age,
Mm-hmm.
and before we even know who we are
Right.
as people, we are already starting to build this idea that like I'm a bad person,
That's
or
right.
like, and that I'm because I thought this or I did this, and I'm sure it could be argued that like I just have like a misunderstanding of that concept, and true, that's fair, but that exists, right? Like as young people
Mm-hmm.
have misunderstandings of concepts, and those narratives, those mental narratives, are create our reality. That they are felt in our body, they are felt within our experiences. So that's stuff that we're carrying for like a very, very long time. I'm just going to use like the Ten Commandments for example. When I was a young person, when I looked at like the Ten Commandments, I was like, these are 10 things I am not supposed to do. I'm
Right.
going to hell and I'm
That's
doomed
right.
and whatever. Um, and I'm still worried about like monsters in the night with a nightlight. Let alone thinking about like how like the fate of my eternal soul.
Right.
Um, but then later on in life, I go and I study like Buddhist practices, and I start to look at like the precepts, for example, which I think can be thought of similar as like as a type of like parallel.
Yeah.
But the thought is they aren't like rules; they're trainings. Like they're things that I'm trying to do, right? Things that
Right.
I'm trying to do that I believe lead to a just more balanced equitable, wholesome life in another capacity. When I first learned about those, and I went back and I'm like, oh man, what if I looked at like the Ten Commandments as these are things I'm trying to do, right? Like not just like
Mhm.
what I'm not supposed to do, but like, oh, these are things that as a person I'm trying to do to live a better balanced life and whatever. It has a different feel to it, like it has a different
That's right.
relationship. So there is that like that aspect of the journey. I think that's part of it as well, is it
Mm,
allows you to revisit some things and look at it with new eyes and listen
that's
to
right.
it with new ears, and you gain new knowledge and just like
Right.
a new relationship with it,
Right.
uh,
Well, and
but
it's not, it's the thing that came to my mind was it's not what you say, it's how you say it, right? So like, why does every motorcycle in the world want to pass by now when we're having this conversation? When it's but it's exactly what you just said, because religion itself is not bad, right? It's not the religion, it's how it's presented to people, and how it's been historically presented to people. It's been shoved down people's throats to say like what you're practicing. Let's talk about colonization. You know what I'm saying? Like that religion was brought by the colonizers to tell other people that you're not doing it right, you're doing bad, like what you're doing is not right. So it's that is rooted in white supremacy, patriarchy, all that stuff, and that's what leaves a bad taste in people's mouths.
mhm,
But if you can do something like this and then go back and revisit, I mean, one of the best things I did in undergrad was take a world religion course, because of that. I saw that every religion, when you dig deeper, it's all the same. It's everything that gets piled on top of it in order to, like, whatever, for power, for control, because we can't have religion without politics, unfortunately, even though it's not supposed to be that way, but it is. And that's what turns a lot of people off and gets them into the road that, the questioning piece, right? And we should question everything. Jesus wanted us to question everything. God wants us to question everything. People get so complacent because of fear, because of not wanting to do the work, like you said, because the work has to be done. You
mhm.
have to have this foundation, and then what else is there? And because I know there's more out there. So how do I find that? And that seems to be the experience that you had. After this conversation with your uncle, you were just like, okay, I there's more. I need more. I need more.
Yeah, there was I think I was taking a as my insight dialogue class. Amazing. I love insight dialogue. I think it's an amazing practice. Gregory Kramer, I'm going to plug that out there. Uh, there was something I was reading that had just said like representation, right? And like and broke down the word representation, like representation. And
Hmm.
something clicked in me where I was just like, the minute we start talking about something, right? The minute that we start trying to conceptualize it in our minds and start to like paint it or whatever, we're not talking about it anymore,
That's
right?
right.
Like it's already a level 2, 9, 10 levels removed, whatever it is we're talking about. So it's benefits us to hold that in our thoughts,
Right.
in our practice, in our engagement, that like we're not talking about it. We're
Right.
talking about our representation of it.
That's right.
um, and that can shift things, that can change things, like words, as beautiful as they are, can fail us. They can
Hmm.
fail us. We're already a level removed, which is what leads us to why silence is such a beautiful thing, why being in silence and allowing ourselves to be in silence occasionally, um, is such a beautiful thing, because all of the noise and the narratives and all of this and that and that and that and that, all of the things we think we're thinking about, we're already past it.
That's
We're already
right. That's
past
right. Yeah, that's right. That is, it's just an amazing. I don't even understand what's happening right now.
it.
It's summertime. That's why. But it's such an amazing journey, and I love your God story, because it is, so many people have experiences like that and they don't know what to do with them. You stopped and you listened, and you got what you needed, and didn't question it. Well, maybe you questioned it a little bit, but still went forward. You still said, okay, all right, I'm following the breadcrumbs. I'm just going to do this. It doesn't matter whether people think it's wrong or whatever it is. This feels right in my heart. And I think if we can ground ourselves in our body, right, tether ourselves to the heavens and to the earth, and then ground ourselves in our heart, then we can find what we need for ourselves.
Yeah, 100%. That's and to me, that's what I think I'm like really passionate about. Is it's not about like it's about all of us, but so much of it is like about you also, right? Like in the way that you relate to it, in the way that like you live it, in the way that you experience it, in the way that it's whatever you want to call it, like moves through you and is expressed through you, because that's like a part of it. That's and I think learning to practice and dive into just that relationship with self as a part of this unfolding process and everything that we're experiencing is just like a really beautiful, scary, traumatic, loving, humbling experience.
Yep.
That is absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
You For me, an aspect of that in grad school was that I had a lot of fear about who I was as like a student, right?
Yeah.
Because I've always, I've, I've always used to like kind of create like jokes to buffer my insecurities around like my academic performance. I'm not the best like test taker when it comes to like recalling information. Like I'm not the most skilled in that type of area. So I took a lot of honors classes when I was in high school. And I was used to say like I'm like the dumb kid in the smart classes. But that's I'm using humor as a way to just put a little bit of the protective defenses around the fact that I actually kind of feel like insecure about performance. And I was feeling a lot of that in grad school. I'm someone who again is like very new to mindfulness practice. This is not like learning everything. I'm trying to acquire and accumulate as much information, and then just like even the thought of like graduating and like having my degree, how am I gonna like represent that? Like, am I like once I got my degree, there was so much anxiety about like shit. Like now I'm a master. Like,
what am I doing now? What do I do?
Where do I go now?
Yeah.
So for me, my thesis project was like a big shift for me in being with that, because I think it allowed me to really be authentic. Sometime around my like right before my thesis work, I really started to play with the idea of just like, I know for myself, things are felt. I may not always be the best to articulate, things are very much felt. So how can mindfulness be felt? Not just like explored and or explained to someone and be like, this is what mindfulness is, X, Y, Z. How could it be felt? And I've always been like a real fan and just artist and music and all of it. So that's when the idea kind of like really started to stem, right? I realized I've something that kind of got me through grad school. I started to write a lot of poetry. I think I've always like really liked to do like to tell stories and compose like poems and things. When I was in middle school, actually, I don't know why this came up, but when I was in middle school, uh, we used to at the lunch tables, we used to like sit around and I'm a like also like a big video game person. Um, we used to like play some game, and then I would like go to lunch and like retell the story at lunch. Like that would be lunch, or just like me listening to the stories. I should have known then that I love to tell stories. But anyway, in grad school, I found myself like writing a lot of poetry, and I shared a poem with my best friend Vinny, and he's like, "Yo, you need to like share that with people." And I was terrified to do it. Sharing poetry for me is very much like sharing just a part of my heart that I was afraid to expose to the world. And I was nervous. I was like, no, man, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to do it. So I did it, and it was like very well received. And there was something about that I think left me connected just to the part about writing. And then from there, it kind of stemmed. I was like, what if I started making music? Like, what if we put mindfulness like this? And it inspired the whole idea of like, I'm going to write a rap album based on mindfulness practices, and my whole thing with that was like, whether you understand it from like a conceptual level, like you understand what I'm talking about in the terms of practice, or you're just like vibing with the music, we're connecting. We're connecting to something that is like deeper than the words themselves. And I went back and I was like, man, I've been writing stuff and sharing music for years now, and I still kind of get nervous, but I still get really excited when something like clicks.
Yeah.
I'll be driving in the car and suddenly like a beat comes on and I feel it. I'm like, oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's the next one. I can tell right now. Or I'll be driving and I'll see like Eli in the back, and Eli will start like bobbing to something. I'm like, all right, you're right. Like that's the next one. And it's something that's like such a beautiful practice for me now.
Yeah.
It's practice for me, to be able to share my heart and to share something that is really heart based. That
Yeah.
for me is not just like surface level.
That's
I'm
right.
doing my best to speak to pain and fear and to love and growth and
How are you
mystery.
sharing this?
Facebook, hit me up on
Okay.
Facebook right now.
Yes, yes, yes. No, I shared the one that you just, I don't know if that was the most recent one you just posted, but like I want people to find this. You know why? Because when you start doing this work, one of the things, a lot of things have to change, right? You become more tenderhearted, you become more sensitive to things. So music is one of the first things that I changed when I really dove. I mean, my spiritual journey has been my whole life, but when I really dove into it and started getting very tender,
Yeah,
music had to change for me. Like I can't listen. I grew up on Biggie. I grew up on, all those. I just can't listen to it anymore. It hurts my heart. It like doesn't do it for me. So I look for that music that feeds my soul. It talks about love and the earth and connections to everything and people, and so I want people to find you, and I want you to be able to to continue to share this music because it is so loving, and that's what we need to surround ourselves with.
I appreciate you saying that, because I think that's what it is for me. Like I I grew up listening to rap music. I love rap music.
Yeah.
When the the Super Bowl show with Snoop Dogg, I was losing
Oh
my
yeah,
mind.
no, I love it. I have like it's like this love there's not even hate, just this kind of
There's
conflicting
like a
thing for me
dissonance
now,
though, but
right?
there is a dissonance, right? Because I'm like,
Yeah.
because the beats are fire, and like
Yes.
I love that, and
Yes.
I recognize that what we breathe and speak into this world is of importance.
That's right.
It's not just like a value, but it has influences and it changes things.
That's
So
right.
for me, when I go and I create music, it's trying to merge those two, right? Like that
Right.
mindfulness doesn't have to be boring. It doesn't
Right.
have to be
That's
just
right.
sitting still. I think it's a beautiful thing, but it could also be like let's like rock out, like let's
That's
go hard
right.
on this, and that is also life and generative, and just like beautiful practice, and it's a way to connect to people.
Yeah.
It's a doorway, because
Yeah.
like not everyone's experience with practice, or I guess like doorway into practice is just sitting in silence. Like that
Right.
doesn't work for
Right.
people. Um, but if maybe you hear a song and you're like, yeah, that is fire, and you just start like listening to it, and you don't know why you keep listening to it, but you're like connecting to it,
That's
that
right.
maybe that does lead to, maybe I want to just learn a little bit more about it,
Yeah.
and go from there. So I think there's a lot of doorways to experience, and I'm just trying to help, offer some new ones to people.
That's right. That's right. So, how else are you bringing mindfulness to the world? Because I know you have is it a 6 week series coming up at Copper Beach, or is it 4 weeks? How many
Or
weeks?
4 weeks, yeah, 4 weeks.
Okay.
So yeah, so I work at Copper Beach Institute, obviously, and do a lot of mindfulness stuff there. I'm very grateful for my role. One of those things, I teach my intro to mindfulness and mindfulness 101, and that is an intro course to practice. And honestly, teaching intro classes, I think, is my favorite type of class to teach, because that's where it starts. It
That's right.
starts with like, let's ask some questions about
Yeah.
these things that we're experiencing in our lives, and let's have fun with it. Let's be
Mhm.
soft. Let's show compassion towards each other. Let's joke. Let's have a good time, and sort of like start to allow that softening of our hearts as we start to just experience it. Because, what you learn is a big part of mindfulness practice is compassion. Is compassion, because it's not always easy. Sometimes as we sit with it, it brings up some heavy feelings and some fears, some worries, anxieties. So really allowing compassion to flow and be a part of the process is huge. So for me, mindfulness 101 is an opportunity for us to like not be so serious.
That's
Like,
right.
these sort of repetitive thoughts or these nagging habits and the things that we do, like, you are not the only person. I promise you, we all do it at some point. How do we work with it? How do
Yeah.
we continue just to move through that? So yeah, mindfulness 101, September 5th, I think, is the next cohort. So yeah, I'm doing work there. I'm doing a ton of work in Waterbury right now with the youth, and that has been so just invigorating to be around kids and practice this kind of work. They are keeping me on my toes. Shout out to my friends at United Way Greater Waterbury. They're making it possible for us Copper Beach to be able to do this amazing work with youth. But we're doing some amazing things, offering these kids the opportunity to just have these tools and resources that were not easily and readily available, I think, to young people years ago. And honestly, much of it has to do with, you have a lot of adults now in their lives who are realizing, like, man, I need some tools and resources to deal with a lot of stuff that started from when
Mhm.
I was a young person that I'm
That's right.
like now feeling, like really feeling the effects of as an adult. So now we have the opportunity to go and work with young people and say, listen, you know, here's some tools. Let's learn how to breathe. Let's just get you
Yep.
really excited and just curious about like your experience, and teaching young people mindfulness is such a different experience from
Mhm.
teaching adults, and in a very like beautiful way, because it's just so experiential in the moment, right? Like, it's play. It's really just like, it's really
Right.
play, and just getting kids to stop every now and then and say, hey, how did that make me feel?
That's
Like,
right.
how did that make me feel? Oh, I realized that this kind of feels good. Let's just do some deep breaths. you know
Mhm.
Seeing kids also like teach other kids or
Yeah.
encourage kids to just slow down for a second and take a deep breath or do something that feels like good for their body is it's beautiful.
Mhm.
It's humbling. It's a reminder for me as an adult to not take everything so seriously all the time. um yeah, so it's been some really like amazing work, and I'm looking forward to continuing to do that work in the new spaces that I'll explore and get to do that work in the future.
Yeah. I'm so excited, and that's awesome. I saw one of those videos pop up on Facebook about you with the kids, and I was like, and Waterbury's near and dear to my heart because I did a lot of my clinical work out there when I was getting my license, and I did mobile crisis and worked with the youth out there. So it's beautiful to see that this is being brought to them because it's a different generation, and they need those tools so much because they want the tools and they're so receptive to it. They want it, especially after the pandemic and all the stuff that we've been through as a collective. So yeah, I'm so happy that you're bringing that to the
Yeah,
youth.
yeah, it's needed.
Yeah.
I think I joke, right, as a millennial. I appreciate the time that I think I was born, because I like to joke with young people, be like, I existed before the internet was a huge thing. Just so you know, it was a huge thing. But I think I appreciate that as like a facilitator, as a practitioner for myself, because we really are living in a time right now where technology is just so ingrained into everything,
Hmm.
um, that it is hard to stop.
Yeah,
It's really hard to stop. So
that's right.
sometimes I might find myself, I guess because they're at a younger age was this degree of like distance and separation from technology, there is this ability to stop and recognize the value and the importance of slowing down and pausing and seeing like when I'm getting too wrapped up in technology or like falling down the rabbit hole of social media or whatever it might be. Um, but that is a luxury that new generations don't necessarily have, because
Hmm.
technology is just ingrained in everything that they do,
That's right.
from their own personal lives to
Mhm.
school to everything, how we
Right.
communicate with each other. And I recognize that that's definitely something as a facilitator that I'm really holding.
Yeah.
That it is hard to pause and to stop because so much is wrapped up in this like constant busyness of being seen, like social engagement, and being involved with the technological world. So yeah,
Yeah.
I would encourage all generations older to recognize that when we're speaking with younger people, that just it's different. It's a
Right.
different way of relating to experience.
Yes.
Uh, yeah, just to
Yeah.
hold that in your heart.
That's right. That's right. So, well, that just kind of leads me to the last three questions that I ask everyone that is so gracious to come and talk to me. Is so maybe I'll start out of order. So, like, what advice do you have for the youth? Since we're talking about that, right? What advice do you have for the youth? I think you kind of just said it already, but what is it that you tell them now, or you would tell your child, right? Because you have a baby, so you know, in order for them to kind of navigate this world.
Yeah.
There's so
Um,
much, right? But like,
yeah, no, there's a lot. I think I'm really trying to bring my son into mind as I sit with this one, and it'd be like don't be afraid to really express yourself, um, and continue to find people who support that in you, and what feels right for you, that allows you to feel like you are loved and seen for your authentic self. I think there's a lot of voices that get us to question that within ourselves, and that can be a really scary thing. And sometimes we shut ourselves out, or we try to change ourselves or do things differently for the sake of appeasing the voices out there.
hmm hmm
Yeah, really practice and honoring that thing, that voice, that energy that within you that feels right and authentic, and
that's right.
honor the hell out of it.
Yeah, yeah, and that's trust within yourself, and that's we think it's hard to trust other people, but it's harder to trust ourselves. It's hard to trust other people because oftentimes we don't trust ourselves.
Right.
So yeah, trusting that guidance within you. Yeah. So my next question is, so what advice do you have for young Brian, knowing what you know now?
You did the best with what you knew at the time.
That's
So
right.
forgive yourself.
Yeah.
Forgive yourself. And every day is a new day to
Yeah.
start fresh and to start
Yeah.
new. Um, guilt is a heavy cross to bear. Um,
Mhm.
and I think we carry a lot of guilt and shame and this heavy negative feelings for trying to do our best without having all of the pieces, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
So it's okay to like let it go,
That's right.
and so it's
Mhm.
okay to let it go. It's okay to give yourself some compassion and forgiveness. Yeah,
Yeah.
you did the best you can with what you did.
I love that. I love that. And then my last question is, what lights you up?
Whew, lights me up. Music. That's
Yeah.
one. That's definitely my love language. I love when people share music with me.
Mhm.
Anything that like touches you or like touches your spirit, and when that's shared with me, that's a really big one. Um, and food, like good food, like food and company.
Yes.
Like no, I really do. I love. I just like love when other people are having like a really good time. That really excites me. That really fuels me up. I remember being at my wedding in Colorado, and stopping dancing with my wife and just look around, like just take a look at everybody around us, and just like look at everyone just so happy in their own
Mhm.
spaces. Like there's something about finding joy in other people's joy that
Right.
is so filling and so fulfilling.
Mhm.
That's that's what I'm about right now, right? Like I just love leaning into joy, whether it's coming from something that I produced or created or brought to this world, or celebrating someone else's joy. Like I love seeing, like when I just, it's a real funny story, not even funny story, but like Taylor Swift is coming into this real quick, right? Like my wife went to a Taylor Swift concert and she loved it. I like got so much excitement around seeing all of these people going to these concerts and just having a good time and like dressing up, having a ball. This is like the same time as like everyone was graduating college and like just getting excited for these next adventures that they're going to go on. Like allow yourself to find
Yes.
joy in other people's joy, right? Like it's okay. It doesn't have to
Yeah,
all come from you. Just like joy
that's
is
right.
joy, and enjoy it. So
Yeah.
yeah, that fills me up. Music, food, and finding joy in other
Enjoy.
people.
Yeah, I love it. Love it. Love it. I'm right there with you. I do that joy in other people in that circle. It's just beautiful. Yeah. So thank you so much, Brian. I so appreciate you. This was a beautiful conversation. I learned so much about you, and thank you for your time. So yeah. So guys, look for Brian if you are interested in mindfulness. Learn from Brian because he will teach it with fun and love and compassion, and you will love mindfulness. So go on Copper Beach Institute's website. I'll put the link in the comments so you can join his Mindfulness 101. It's only 4 weeks and it's going to be amazing. And it starts in September. So get on it, guys, because we all need some peace and love and mindfulness in our lives so that we can live better and so that we can, get this planet where it needs to be, get humanity where it needs to be. So thank you so much, Brian. I appreciate you. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. Until next time, right?
Nice.